Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. It is a Monday night, and we got a little new series, Burning Questions, Cold Answers. The 30-minute clock starts now. What I will do is give you a quick introduction, right? And this is simple. Long-term viewers of the channel will know this already. If you're looking for sensationalist clickbait or made-up stuff, ain't going to be me. I will answer every question as best I can. I will give you the most honest answer that I can. And if I don't know, I will say I don't know. With that in mind, let's fucking go. Steve Davis says, hi, Si. How many bids for Tan to look at? What about the South African bid? Is Darwin involved, as he seems to have gone off the radar? So, as far as I know, and I can only say about what I know, there's three parties that are interested in buying Cardiff City. There is what is described as the South African bid, which is technically right, but also not strictly true, because certainly the name that I know is he was born in South Africa, but he holds American citizenship and has lived in the UK for a while due to his love of football. I've also, the only other information I've got about that party is I think there's two other people involved, and I've heard they're all absolutely caked. The other party is obviously Gareth Bale's consortium, although I might have something to add on that later. And then the third party, I think, is a party within the Cardiff City board who are trying to do it. Very unlikely, in my opinion, that they would have the funds to do so. Steve Davis also says, any incoming or outgoing soon? So there's an obvious complication with this in that there's clearly some stuff going on behind the scenes, which makes both incomings and outgoings difficult. I've been told that there's 2 to 3 signings already lined up and ready to go, but for whatever reason, they haven't been finalized. In terms of outs, obviously, you've got, looks like Tucanoda's on his way out. There's been a couple of bids recently for Salic, which we turned down, Robertson, and there was a weird thing with Callum Chambers and QPR on a free, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything more about that. As I say, I will try to just be as forthright and honest as I can and get through as many as I can. John Watkins says, following the question above, do you think we are better off with a sole owner or a consortium given the ill-fated Turleski consortium in the 70s? So I can't speak too much for the 70s, mate. It's a bit before my time, unfortunately. But what I can say is, look, if you've got a massive consortium of blah, blah, 8, 9, 10 people, then I think it's problematic. You always have to have like a main guy who's got the final say. Otherwise, it's going to be problematic. I think the most important thing for me is that they have the money to sustain the club in the short term, because Vincent Tan is ploughing a shitload of money into the club. So I was laughing at Ian Dalglish's question, which I was reading, and I will be answering it. I forgot what I was saying now. Through me. Consortium, yeah. So, important for me is that they've got enough funds to sustain the club in the short term and then obviously the long term. But also, I think it's important that they somewhat care about the club, or at least care about football, and it's not just a business plaything for them, which is my understanding that, as I mentioned just now, the guy who was born in South Africa and then has citizenship in the US is literally moved to the UK because of his love for football, which is encouraging for sure. Martin says, any truth in the rumor that this group complete the takeover, that our logo will be the Springbok? I don't think so, mate. Maybe we'll have a change of badge though. I mean, if you bought Cardiff City, right, no matter who you were, there's some seriously easy PR to get the fans on side, right? You change the badge back to the badge and you change the red seats blue. Straight away, you're going to be popular. JT says, Paul Abandonato is very quiet at the moment. I suspect will start talking if Dalman's party's front of the queue. I don't think it's necessarily that, mate. I think it's more a case of, one, he's been in Spain for the friendlies, and you can't report or you can't talk about it if you don't or you haven't heard about stuff, and sometimes you're asked to keep things silent. It's just one of those things. I'm sure when the time's right, he'll talk on the subject. Ian Dalglish says credit card number and 3 numbers on the back. 1, 2, 3, 4. I am well, Steve. Thank you very much. Oh, you little shit, Rhys. Rhys says, when's the next live event and with whom? So I can't tell you when the next live event is because it's not signed. What I can tell you is that in December, Stephen McPhail is coming over to do a live event with us. So that'll have to do. Don't forget the expiry date, yeah. Steve says, how close, Steve Davis Evans says, how close to signings? It's almost impossible to say, mate. What I would say is that we're signing players for the 21s. We signed Matthew Apter. I think that Welsh League player that we've been linked with, paying the release clause for, I think is probably an under 21 sign. And yeah, it is what it is. Martin says, what's happening with the rumoured bid for Robertson? I've no idea whether it's been turned down or not. The last I'd heard is that his agent was having a chat with the club. I don't know whether that meant Cardiff City or whether it was with the club that made the bid. I don't know that. Baker Boy says, automatics playoff or mid-table. What do I think we'll finish or what do I hope for? I think, realistically, we should be aiming for automatics. We just should. I think all relegated sides are looking at that. The automatics, the first season they come down. But I also think we maybe need to be patient with a new manager and a very young squad. Playoffs, I think, would be a good season. But obviously, I want to go up. JT says, a giant from Flint Town, I nearly spat my drinks out. Standards on the floor with recruitment. Mate, so I do understand that feeling, but I think too many clubs, not just Cardiff, miss out on having a look in the non-league, the Welsh League, particularly with things like Y Scout now and analysis, and you can literally watch pretty much any game, professional game. I just think, like, sometimes for what's effectively a free transfer, like, they're next to nothing in terms of what they cost. All right, Joe, chill out. It's worth a gamble. Like, if he comes off, great. If he doesn't, then you probably move him on to a Welsh League club in a couple of years. It's worth a gamble. He's 20. He's big. Got a decent reputation. He's done all right. He deserves his opportunity. Why shouldn't it be Cardiff take a gamble on him? He'll be with the 21s, I think. Isaac Lee, that's the one. I think he'll be a 21 signing. I'd be shocked. Unless, like, Brian Barry Murphy has got some sort of secret link to the Welsh League, I'd be shocked if he was for the first team. I really would. Jonathan Mordecai says, Callum Chambers on a free. I know we're desperate to get off the wage books, but come on, that's ridiculous. Reminds me of Solskjaer days when we had to give everyone away. From what I gather, it was QPR which made the offer for him to take him for free, not us looking to offload him for a free. I have no idea what the answer was either way. Steve Davis Evans said, if you put £1 on who you think will take over, who are you picking? As it stands now, the South African consortium, just for the terms of describing or separating each one, that would be where I am, because they've been talking. I don't know if they've been negotiating, but they've been talking to the club since January. I said to you guys, and this is why I sometimes say you got to pay attention, because will try and be very careful with how I word stuff. And I think it was about 3 or 4 Sundays ago when it broke about the takeover first. And I said, there's a party that is way further along than people realize. And that's kind of what I was referring to. They're like way further along. And if, as has been speculated, they've things like they got access to the books. To do that, you've got to have somewhat of an agreement in place. Now, who knows? But it's interesting. So I'm also, by the way, I'm not going to just volunteer information. People got to ask the right questions, and I'll answer them. Lewis Watts says, "Is Johan Rupert the name?" No, he's not. Not the name that I know. Now, as I said earlier, I know of a name, and then there's two others who were part of that. I think two others, although someone did say four, but I think it's three of them. And Johan Rupert is not one of the names, but that's not one of the names that I've heard. To clarify, that's not one of the names that I heard. So he could be one of the three. I just haven't heard it. Jonathan Mordecai says, could Bale and the South African consortium join forces? So, I mean, obviously anything is possible, right? Yeah. This is my speculation, though, right? It's really, really, really weird why Gareth Bale has been so public. And again, this is an opinion and a bit of a conspiracy theory. It's really weird that Gareth Bale's been so public about it. Now, if I and a few other people know about this other party that's a bit further along, say, or in negotiations, let's say, you'd imagine that the other party involved would also know that. Yeah. So why be so public about it, particularly when, if you're led to believe reports, their bid was turned down? Now, as I said, if the South African, just to separate who we're talking about, if their consortium is made up of three people, but we don't know who some of those people are, is it possible that Gareth Bale is part of that consortium? I don't know. I cannot say because I don't know. Gareth Bale's never clarified who his sort of investors are and stuff like that. So it's kind of one of them, isn't it? Jonathan says, Steve McPhail's a big one. Well done, Si. Thank you very much, mate. Mark Cox says, Willock will be on his way. Willock will be on his way by the end of the week. I have heard he's leaving. Rhys says, Willock, what have you heard? I've heard he's leaving. It's been on the cards for a while. I think out of like first team group, I think he's probably the most likely to go next, if that makes sense. I don't think he'll be the only one that goes, though. Clever. Jonathan says, have you got the three names of the players that are close? I've got two of them. Well, I've got one, which I'm pretty sure of. The second one, which I'm pretty relatively sure of. And then I don't know the third one, although I have an idea of it. So I'm pretty sure we have a deal in place for Darko Gyabi. But because of the delay, for whatever reason, in finalizing that deal, there's always a worry that he could go somewhere else if he gets fed up. And then a keeper was the other thing I was told. There's a couple of names with a keeper. I think it most likely would be the Fleetwood Town keeper because he was recommended by Craig Bellamy, so it makes sense. Mark says, any interest in Atete and Darland? Atete, not so much, from what I know anyway. Yes, but Darland is, from what I heard, or the latest I heard on him, was that BBM didn't fancy him particularly. And I'd heard about 2 weeks ago that the club had kind of tried to find a buyer and not had much luck. But I don't really know, where it goes. Like Daniel says, do you still think we're in a chance for getting Darko Gyabi? So today he's been linked with a few championship clubs. I think the longer it goes, the more likely it is that he could go elsewhere because he will want to get his pre-season started. He wants to be playing. So whatever the reason is for the delay, we can all speculate, but ultimately I don't know. I know we met him, we talked to him. I don't know after that. CCFC Insider says QPR signed a centre back today, so I wonder if that rules Chambers out if your link's true. Yeah, I mean, it could be that we told him where to go. I don't know what the answer was, but equally, he played as a six most of the last season as well. So I don't know, mate. Is what it is, isn't it? Evening, Rhys. Luke says, we're signing all these under 21 players. Does that mean a good chunk of the young players on the Spain tour will stay in the first team? That's an interesting one, isn't it? So I'll tell you what. I can only really speculate on that, right? But Will Spears impressed. I know the club rate him. He certainly has not done his chances any harm, and I thought the other lad did well as well. Giles, I believe the plan was for him to go out on loan, but that could easily change. I thought he did all right the other day. That's the best I can do, really, mate. But ultimately, I think like Nayakawa, I think has done a real good job on the tour, and I think that has probably put him in a good position to be in the first team squad. Now, whether that develops into him being in the matchday squad every week, starting games, I don't know. It depends how much money we've got, who we bring in, but I don't think he's done his chances any harm at all. Steve Davis Evans says, is the South African guy Gary Lubner? No. Well, again, that's not the name I heard, so is or isn't. Like, I'm not going to lie, and I don't know. Matthew says, do you know if an offer has been accepted or a price stated by the South African party? I believe that a kind of rough price has been agreed. Like, because I think, I don't know. Look, I'm not going to lie. I don't know the process and how it all works, but I would imagine if you get to the bit where you're like having access to books and accounts and stuff like that, I'd imagine two things have to have been done. You'd have to have shown proof of funds, and you'd have to have had a kind of rough agreement in terms of a price, whether that's like Vincent Tan saying, I want X amount, and them going, yeah, we can do that, or whether they have to nail down a price. Only because I don't know the process, but my feeling is that they've been talking a while. I'm not going to say that because no one asked her. I'm going to be a good boy. Matthew says, is it true that side at the South African consortium were at the CCS today? Right. So, as far as I knew, they came into the UK over the weekend, not Cardiff, just into the UK over the weekend, and then they were heading to Cardiff the early part of this week. I, however, do not know if they were at the CCS today because that information was from the end of last week. They were coming into the UK over the weekend, and then they were going into Cardiff early this week. Now, from what was put up on the Cardiff City forum earlier, the reason I put like a check, because that marks it kind of, it was not exact. Like I was under the absolute impression that if they were flying to Cardiff today, it wasn't from abroad. It would have been from somewhere within the UK. I also was under the impression that they were coming to Cardiff to the stadium or whoever to meet Tan's people in the early part of this week. So that's where it kind of matches up, but maybe not exact. But, when people are getting information and things get talked about or whatever, that's what happens, isn't it? You get bits and pieces. Bradley says, what about Perry Ng leaving? I'd be shocked if he leaves, mate, because he won't pass a medical. Because as far as I'm aware, he's out until December. So Martin says, is Willock on his way to the championship? No idea, mate. I would imagine so, though, unless he's going abroad. Lewis says, anything happening with Robinson? I think he's got a bit of a knock in terms of moving on. I haven't heard anything for a couple of weeks. There was talk that maybe he was on his way, but I think that was more linked to him not playing than anything. I haven't heard anything from like the people who I really trust. I haven't heard anything about him going anywhere solid. Like Lewis also says, are you happy with the 3 players? And will the fans be? Well, I think we need a keeper. I quite like that Fleetwood keeper from what I know of him, not a lot. I'd be very happy with it if we can get Darko Giabi. I think, like I said, the longer it goes on, I worry about it. And the third one was a loan from a Premier League club. I'd be the little I know of him, he'd be all right. Like I might do a recruitment report on him soon. Daniel says, a South African living in the USA as Elon Musk moved to the UK for the love of football. So South African-born US citizenship, moved to the UK a while ago. It's not Elon Musk. Could just put that one to bed. Rhys David Evans says, good. I think I messaged you the other week saying I'd been told someone to come in for Willock. You did. So good to know that was the case. Yeah. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. I think it's just a bunch of letters, but I apologize if it's not. Who excites you more, the South African bid or Bales? See, that's really tricky, right? Because I think the possibility of Gareth Bale being like a figurehead at Cardiff City is super exciting. And I think it's easy for us to forget sometimes as Cardiff and Welsh fans is how worldwide Gareth Bale is one of the most famous footballers in the world. So from commercial point of view, from a, all that sort of point of view, like it's obviously exciting. But without knowing who his investors are or what the consortium's made up of, it is very difficult to say. Like, I would love Gareth Bale to be a figurehead at Cardiff City, but it's no good him being a figurehead at Cardiff City if that consortium doesn't have the funds to do what they want to do or whatever. I don't know. With regards to the South African bid, I've heard they're absolutely caked, mate, is the word that I was said. Like, but again, the thing which I'm encouraged by with that is that the main guy has got a severe love of football to the point where he moved to the UK for that, and that's exciting. Kyle Branner says, any news on a second bid for Salic? I have not heard anything. All I was told is that we turned the bid down, and I've heard that Brighton Barry Murphy was quite openly telling fans in Spain that he's not for sale. So that's good. I'm going to skip some of just the comments and get to the questions because I've only got 8 minutes left, and then I'm moving on to a member show with Matt. Lewis, they're absolutely caked. Glass Steve says, are we looking at Camille Conte from Rovers? As I said at the start of the show, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say if I don't know, I don't know. And I haven't heard that name linked with anyone when I've been speaking to people. So apologies, but it is what it is. Jonathan says, has BBM got to raise funds for the deal he wants? I was under the impression that we were going to back him. I was told that they would back him with ins and outs and whatever he kind of wanted within reason. He wouldn't have millions and millions to spend, but he would get to reinvest anything he brought in, or the club brought in. However, possibly maybe things have changed, isn't it? Like with that. My biggest thing for me is like, let's just make sure we hold on to the likes of Salic and Ruben, because so often you see if clubs are in a takeover, the assets start getting stripped and the big players go, and that would be disastrous, whoever takes over. Nick Hancock says, Giabi on a loan or a permanent? I think it was a permanent, mate. I have to double check that, though. I want to say that clearly again. I will have to double check that. Elon Musk. It is not Elon Musk, as far as I'm aware, unless he's one of the three. Matthew Ashburn says, could we see a best bid scenario between the three parties, and do you know the deadline date for this? I don't know any deadline dates. If you look at it from Vincent Tan's point of view, and right, this is why I keep saying to people, I know it's exciting and it's difficult not to get really amped up about it, but you just got to relax a little bit, because at any point, Vincent Tan could throw a massive spanner in the works of any takeover and just change his mind. He is that kind of type of guy. You've only got to listen to people like Peter Risdale and Sam Aman talk about him and how difficult he is to deal with. So that's why I just think until it's signed, sealed, and delivered, it's just you've got to treat everything with a pinch of salt. No matter how good the source is, no matter what people are telling you, you've got to take it with a pinch of salt until it actually happens, because otherwise you're going to get your heart broken. And also, from Vincent Tan's point of view, the best scenario is to have all three parties who want to buy the football club. Like, he's going to want like an auction type thing, innit? Like, you'd think that would be his best bet to get the most amount of money. Jonathan says, have you asked about BBM coming on the podcast? Yeah, I haven't asked about him coming on a podcast. I did ask the question about a live event, and I got pied off with no reply. What could you do? The replies are hit and miss. Lena McCafferty says, is the name for the South African party Patrice Motsepe? So I heard that name today for the first time. That isn't the name that I had heard throughout the process. 5 minutes countdown. Nick Hancock says Travis Patterson possibly from Villa. Yeah, that's the fullback alone that I'd heard that we've made a shout for. How confident am I in the takeover happening? This is the closest that we have ever been to Vincent Tan selling the club. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but this is the closest it's ever been, in my opinion, because like this, I don't want to say South African because he's got an American citizenship. He's not just him, as he does. Let's just call him the South African party. They kept it under wraps for so long, like the negotiations and stuff like that. That gives me hope. Cameron says, any truth, Johan Rupert? Not a name I've heard. I know it's been floating about on the forum and socials and stuff. It's not a name that I've heard, but I will say again, I don't know all the names of the sort of party, which is rumored to be 3 people. John Watkins said, if Bale's successful with a bid, would it mean that the need for a director of football would be less? I would like to think, I said about easy PR, like red seats, change the badge. I think one of them, another sort of relatively simple PR would be a new owner coming in and installing a football operations team. And you could always have Gareth Bale head it up or be a part of it. But I still think you need that team in place to really thrive and grow as a football club. Right, last couple, I think. We'll see how many we can get in. I'm going to answer these as quick as I can. Do you think the new owners employ the right people to make the right decisions, or do you think they will wing it like Tan? If it's the South African bid, I think they will put the right people in charge of the right places because they have a football knowledge. However, I don't know enough about Gareth Bale's consortium to make that call. Ewan Blissett says Nathan Kirsch. I haven't heard that name, mate. Sorry. Daniel said, I do wonder if Bale going so public is to try and put off the potential buyer, as I don't see that strategy working on convincing Tan to sell. Yeah, it's a weird one, mate. It feels like he's trying to win the fans over, but I couldn't see Vincent Tan reacting very well to it, I can see it having the opposite effect with him. Not that I know Vincent Tan, but like, you know what I mean? Martin says, if Takeover's progressed, does the transfer activity become suspended until it's complete? I don't know for sure, mate. I know there's a period where you can have a exclusivity period, and I think that during that period, like, I don't think it's written into it where you can't, but I think generally speaking, historically and at other takeovers, when you have that exclusivity period, you don't see a lot of business being done because obviously they're doing certain things and talking about certain things. Will you tell us more on the member show about the takeover show? I'll answer questions, mate, as best I can. Obviously, I'm trying to do them quickly here, but I will be happy to give a bit more context to stuff on the member show for sure, which starts in about 30 seconds. Where can I message you directly, Si? At Si1927 on Twitter. And that is it. I'm sorry. I said 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I'll answer that one. Salage to Sheffield United. I've been told very, very clearly by a few different people that Yusuf Salage is not for sale. And the fact that Brian Barry Murphy said that to the fans, I think gives you an indication that, Any exciting news coming to CCFC World or Ace Podcast Nation? Ace Podcast Nation is having a soft reboot in the coming weeks where it's going to have, it's got a series about lead singers from rock bands. It's going to have football analysis. It's going to have mental health podcasts and a few other things. Cardiff City World is flying 2 videos a day, 7 days a week, all things Cardiff City. And I've got a feeling it is not going to be boring. in the coming weeks. 30 minutes is up. I tried to get through as many as I physically can. If you'd like to see this series return every couple of weeks, then I'm happy to do so. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're a member, I'll be on the member show in about 30 seconds with Matthew. And if you're not a member, you can still sign up. Patreon.com/acepodcastnation, or just press the join button on YouTube. Keep the faith, take a breath, relax. It's not happening today. Hopefully it happens. And breathe. In a bit.